I think that a lot of CROs forget after they came up through the ranks that first line sales managers are not mini CROs.
Yeah.
They're not thinking the same way. They're not thinking strategically. They have their eyes narrowed in on their team
Yes.
and their direct manager. And it's not, what are we looking at holistically? First line managers are not compensated focusing on the overall North Star of the company, or compensated on what they're focused on. And that's why they're focused there. I think that's the biggest blind spot is they're like, why aren't they thinking this way? It's like, that's not how you're paying them to think. So many people are so scared of AI. I don't know where to start. I'm overwhelmed. We're not ready. A lot of it comes down to, do you have the basic fundamentals in place? Do you have a sales process to follow? And what does that sales process look like? And a lot of teams that we work with don't even have sales enablement teams. They don't even know what that looks like, or they're scared to call their teams sales. Their business development, their customer engagement, because they're scared of the word sales. So a lot of what we talk about is, how do you lay the groundwork? One, we have to admit that everything in life is sales, whether that's convincing your wife you should get another dog, or asking for promotion, that's sales, and also asking somebody to buy your product. So taking sales as not a dirty word and then saying, let's put a workflow into this. What does this actually look like? 101, step 1, step 2, step 3. And then how do we actually start wrapping technology around the processes and formulas around the processes so that it can be streamlined?
This is the Revenue Vault, where revenue machines are built, not bought. Hey, I'm Mark Shan, CEO of Venly and creator of Revenue Engine OS. Now, today's guest is Lauren Goodell, founder and CEO of Zinnia. She has been highly successful as an enterprise AE at companies like Salesforce and Microsoft. And she's lived both the venture-backed software grind and the services side, and now runs a sales acceleration platform that's flipping the script on AI, making it more human, not less. Her take: in a world where software gets commoditized overnight, the human experience is your only real moat. Here's what we dissected: why wrapping services around software reduces churn, increases retention more than margin chasing ever will; how to modernize large enterprises that are still running on pen and paper; the art of forced serendipity, cutting down that awkward hour small talk down to seconds with AI-powered account intelligence. Plus, Lauren breaks down why analyzing a company's 10K and comp structures lets you sell to the personal win, not just the business case. If you want to learn how to build pipeline that actually converts, and you want the playbook for making AI your unfair advantage without losing the human touch, let's hop into it. So, Lauren, you have lived both the venture-backed SaaS grind and the services side of sales enablement. What are the biggest misconceptions CROs are making about balancing software and services in go-to-market?
Oof. I think one of the biggest things today that we're hearing is so many CROs are like, margins are so high on software. Let's focus on the software side of things. But in this world of AI first, lovable vibe coding, all of these things, your software can be replicated so easily. And I think what a lot of people are forgetting is that it's the services, it's the customer experience, it's the human connection that is actually what's going to keep people sticking around and what makes them fall in love with you.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, right? Because I think about, at this time, I think about even the future, right? Like what business is going to be around? What's the hardest business to replicate? And as I think about it, I'm like, if we go to even like the consumer market, like the ones that people are always going to need are a lot of these services. Like, hey, I'm always, if my pipes have issues, I'm gonna need that plumber. Like, I don't want to cut my own lawn, my grass, my lawn. I'm going to hire people in to do that, right? And so with that being said, strategically, because with reps, sometimes you see even the comp structure, right? It drives towards one of what they consider to be more profitable pieces of the business. How should CROs be thinking about even the comp structure potentially then to incentivize maybe the stickiness of the business?
There's a lot of statistics that show that wrapping services around software is actually what increases customer retention and reduces churn. And so creating a comp structure, I always say, is an art, not a science.
Yeah.
And no matter what you put in the comp structures, you're training your staff on what they should be focused on. So if you're focused on longevity of your business and you want to keep your customers around, you want to keep them happy, it's important to be able to also compensate your reps for bringing in services. And how is that weighted? That's really according to you and your business, but it's something that should absolutely be included and that everybody should be aligned on.
You're so right. I mean, I think it boils down to like, what are you optimizing for? right? Are you just optimizing to get a bunch of logos, on there, or you're optimizing for your lifetime gross profit of a deal, right? The longer the deal, obviously, the more customers you can, or the more profit you can generate over time with more upsells. And I think it's so vital. Now, one of the things when we were preparing for today's call, we were talking about some of the enterprise accounts you're working with. They have 600 plus sellers, tons of reps, no real CRM. So, what's the lesson for sales leaders who are trying to modernize their team, but I mean they're just so far behind on the basics?
It's so funny. I joke with my team that enterprise does not mean prepared. Enterprise does not mean knowledgeable, does not mean
That's right.
modern.
That's right.
I mean, we are working with quite a few enterprise clients, and some of them are like, how do I have a discovery call? And they're like, where should I be taking notes when I talk about customers? What should be included in my notes? And it is truly the basic 101. And a lot of these companies are, pretty old, have been around for a long time, are not used to the modern kind of data sets like CRMs or any of the AI tools out there. So it's really about, okay, how do we crawl and then walk and then run? You have to get the basics down, especially as you start looking at adopting AI. AI is only as good as the data you put in. So if you don't have a CRM and you don't have data, you're not going to be able to do a lot with it.
So, because it's a big overwhelming task, right? Like, I got to imagine some of these organizations, they're like, oh, we're talking about getting AI adopted. We don't even have a CRM. Like, where would be the first step you would guide them to go first?
Oh my goodness. So it's so real. So many people are
Oh,
so
yeah.
scared of AI. I don't know where to start. I'm overwhelmed. We're not ready.
Mm,
And a lot of it comes down to, do you have the basic fundamentals in place?
mm,
Do you have a sales process to follow? And what does that sales process look like? And a
mm,
lot of teams that we work with don't even have sales enablement teams. They don't even know what that looks like, or they're
mm.
scared to call their teams sales. Their business development, their customer engagement, because they're
Oh, yeah.
scared of the word sales. And so a lot of what we talk about is, how do you lay the groundwork? One, we have to admit that everything in life is sales, whether
Hmm.
that's
That's right.
convincing your wife you should get another dog, or, asking for promotion, that's sales, and also asking somebody to buy your product. So taking sales as not a dirty
Mm.
word and then saying, let's put a workflow into this. What does this actually look like? 101 step one, step two, step three. And then how do we actually start wrapping technology around the processes and formulas around the processes so that it can be streamlined.
Yeah, I think it's I've always thought about whenever we incorporate new tools, whether it's AI or anything else, it's like rocket fuel, right, for the engine. But if you don't really have an engine built out, you don't have the fundamental, the core process. It's like really hard to do, because I've talked to organizations, right? These are like multi-billion-dollar organizations. I mean, and it's almost like everything's like pen and paper still, like it's kind of wild, or they kind of live in the reps' heads and they kind of
Mhm.
manage it that way. And there's no real like centralized CRM. There's no real process. It's kind of like, hey, just go do what you do.
Mm.
I mean, if you can incorporate some of the processes up front, then you stack tech with that together. I mean, now you can literally overnight like transform the organization. It's pretty it's pretty wild. So, and I'm sure you've seen this too, because you have probably some customers, or prospects. They say, hey, we're not ready for AI. We're not sure we're ready for that. What should CROs take away about timing and readiness and leading their teams through that transition?
The first thing that I say when it comes to we're not ready for AI is that a fear of the data? Is that a
Mm,
fear of not knowing how to use it, or being worried that your team can't adopt it quickly?
mm,
And a lot of what we do with services is, okay, there's a big reason why somebody is going to fill out an account plan, why
mm,
somebody should take notes in CRM, but it can't feel like it's checking a box. It
that's
has
right.
to, you have to start with the why when you're
Mm,
training and enabling a team. Why are we adopting AI? That
mm,
goes all the way back to, why am I filling out an account plan? You're
mm-hmm.
not filling out an account plan to check a box for leadership to
Right.
say, I did it. You're doing it to say, oh, I'm uncovering new opportunity that will
Mm,
build pipeline, and in return, make me more money, give me more
mm-hmm.
commission.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you tie each of the steps back into a why that's personally afflicting?
Mm,
And then taking that and saying, now that we all have buy-in,
mm-hmm.
we know that this is a valuable to do. This is kind of the crawl and then the walk. We know this is valuable. We're learning how to do it. How do we just streamline all of that and automate it?
Mm. And really, what it sounds like you're really talking about is change management, isn't it? Just change management is what it breaks down to.
Hmm.
So, and I can imagine, and probably in certain industries, like for example, you're selling the tech. Generally speaking, they're pretty like kind of forward thinking. They kind of understand, like, yeah, okay, cool, this makes sense. But when you talk to like an older industry, some of these ones have been around for like what's called decades, and they're behind a lot of these things. How do you? And sometimes they almost have like the old guard, if you will, and they're kind of like, this is how we've always done it.
Oh,
We put the reps out there. They go pound the pavement. They knock on doors. They collect business cards, and this is like their thing. How do we help those type of old ways of thinking shift to like embracing something like AI?
a lot of this, like you said, comes back to change management. And this often means not going through the same sales kickoff. We're going to teach you everything in one day, and then everybody leaves and they forget everything within a week.
Right.
It is pulling in some sort of training process along the way to say, we know that this is important fundamentally. How do we check in? But for those that have pushback, there's always going to be a few sellers. There's always going to be a few members of every team that's like, I don't want to use this. What I'm doing is working just fine. And we often use the analogy of when we went to school and teachers would say, you're not going to walk around with a calculator in your pocket. You need to learn how to do these things manually. And now we walk around with a whole computer and server in our pocket, and you can do everything at the click of a button. And so when people say like, oh, I don't want to use that software, like I've been doing this fine just manually. It's like, great. You're now saying that you're doing times tables in your head when you could just have it automated. Instead of you going out and looking at 20 different websites to prepare for a meeting, you can click one button and now have everything at your fingertips. And so it's really about like, do you want to be left behind? Because it's changing. How do we help you get there and add value along the way?
And I can imagine for people like that, if you were to like, I don't call force them, right? But you're like, hey, show me how you do account research. Okay, try this. Like I don't remember the Pepsi challenge, right? Where people try to do soda. It's got, and they get immediately real like, oh my God, like this would have taken me like 2-3 hours to do research. And now within a couple minutes, seconds, if you will, I have it right here. I think it's like mind blowing for a lot of people to experience that, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's really vital whenever I get by, it's like you do not just the rep level, but every single level, so they can truly understand it. Because everything rolls downhill. If they're bottom up top, they'll roll it down as well. One thing is what's cool about Zinnia, about what you do, is you're really passionate about making sales more human. And I think especially in when people hear about AI now, they get these AI generated emails. They get like almost like scared. They're like, oh, like I can kind of see it. It seems robotic, and it's not. I don't respond to that. What does that practically look like when you try to make it more human in sales in the enterprise org with hundreds of reps, multiple layers of leadership, and a heavy process? How do you make that more human?
This is something I'm super passionate about because, like I said at the beginning with software, yes, software is important. Software can be replicated easier than ever. So it comes back down to the services that you wrap around it. And the services could be managed services, paid services. It could also just be your free value add services that you can offer as a sales rep, as a CRO, as an executive. And that comes down to the human element. When we talk to large organizations, when we come in and talk about how do we use AI to make us more human, it's not here is the exact workflow that every single seller should use. This is the exact methodology. It's here's a framework. Now you are a human. And if I said the same script that Marcus said, it's not going to work. Right. We have to make it our own, figure out how it works for us, but then also how it will adapt to the customers and prospects we're talking to.
Yeah, I think it's really, really key, right? I think it's like when we think through tools as frameworks, I think it's a great terminology, right? Versus like a script. The script in our minds, like we read it verbatim, we don't change a single thing. We're basically a robot, which rarely works. But when we understand frameworks, we can adapt. And I've always thought through, from a frameworks perspective, it's like a 8-lane freeway. We're all driving towards the same direction. We have the kind of same destination we want to get to. But based off the person you're talking with, you might speed up, slow down, get off the freeway, get back on, but you're heading towards the same direction. And a framework kind of helps you with that. And I think using tools like AI, that's what helps get there, right? But you need to have critical thinking skills to adjust and accordingly based off your prospect. Does that seem like a pretty fair statement?
Oh, absolutely. One thing we talk about often is, I say, forced serendipity. So if you're ever sitting at a conference next to somebody or at a dinner party, you get sat next to somebody and you're like, I have nothing to talk to this person about. They're the most dull person on earth. And then an hour and a half into dinner, you're like, oh my gosh, we have this, we both went to the same yoga retreat or something like
Mm,
that. And then
yeah.
you can't stop talking about it. It's like Zinnia removes that hour and a half of
Mm.
who the heck is this person? What do we have in common? And it helps light you up and be able to bridge those gaps and create that human connection where what do we have in common? What are we both really passionate about? And how do we build a real relationship, whether or not sales ever happens?
I love that so much, right? Because I think about even how we came across and met, right? We see each other's content, right? Then you had a presentation, amazing presentation over in totality at Knoxville, right? And then we just started talking, right? And we found out obviously many, many common bonds. And fast forward us the forced serendipity, if you will. Now we're jamming out together live, which is pretty awesome, right? And I think about like this is so applicable across the board, that forced serendipity. Because obviously from a sales perspective, you use a tool like Zinnia that can really help you in that sales perspective. But I think about what's that mindset? You have to if you kind of shift your mindset to think, how can I do this in every situation?
Mhm.
I think about like, the first time you meet somebody, it could be a cocktail party, it could be an event. People go, oh, how's it going? It's going good. And then it's like, okay, what happens next? Like, it's like, oh, like, what do you do? Like it kind of this like weird, awkward, forced small talk,
Mhm.
right? And I think through like some of the best prompts I've learned is like, how can you either number one, you share something really interesting about yourself when they ask, how are you, to kind of facilitate the conversation, or you ask a question prompt to get them out of the how are you, you know?
Mhm.
Like for instance, you meet someone, good to meet you. It's like, hey, cool. Like, what's something exciting going on in your life right now that you're passionate about?
Oh, the
Now you're
the question cards. I don't know if you've ever seen the question cards that sit on a coffee table or something.
yeah.
It's those type of conversations. And I think there's some people who are naturally outgoing, like you and I.
Mhm.
Immediately, we're like, "Oh my gosh, we both love fitness. We're both into this." But that's not necessarily doesn't come naturally to everybody.
Yeah.
And so, using technology and using tools,
Mhm.
using trainings is
Yeah.
helping people that maybe it comes less naturally to, or maybe are neurodivergent and have
Mhm.
that harder time connecting, bridging
100%.
that gap way quicker. And I
Yeah.
feel like it's just strengthening humanity.
100%. Now this may shock you. I'm actually not extroverted.
You're not.
I'm
Oh
not.
my goodness.
I actually used to be more introverted. I'm more of an ambivert now, right? Over time, probably because of
Mhm.
sales, but because I was like really awkward small talk early on. I didn't know how to bridge that. Like I wish I had tools like a Zinnia up front because like here I'm being like this awkward. Hey, I see you like the fish. like it's like being very weird. Like doesn't work, right? But I had to learn over time how to like how these kind of frameworks and structures. And I think about people who don't realize that, and they're older now, and they have the same weird habits still, if you will, and they're kind of
Mhm.
socially awkward, right? Versus I was socially awkward, but I kind of had to force that learning. So I think I think about sales organizations. Some salespeople are a little bit awkward,
Yeah.
and they need a little bit of help and coaching, but no one's ever told them that, right? Like so they have to be kind of guided into that. So whenever we can help them ease it, that can be really, really powerful, you know. So we're gonna pivot a little bit, right? So a lot of times, investors they'll push for the high margins, right? They want 90% plus margins, right? Printing cash is what they're kind of going for. But a lot of times these organizations see consulting drive the real impact. So how should CROs think about the ROI and long-term value when choosing vendors under that dynamic?
Mm. So twofold. One, for their products and services that they're
Right.
selling. What's been
Mm,
interesting is, in 2021, investors were all about margin. What is the highest level of margin that you can
mm,
get? How do you push that up and up and
mm.
up?
Yeah.
And you should ignore professional services. Now, when I'm talking to venture capitalists, they are
Mm.
saying to me, we actually love that you guys have professional services. This is
Mm,
actually de-risking you in a market where investment
mm,
is at an all-time low.
mm.
And so being able to build those professional services in de-risk for them. But like we mentioned earlier, this is also from a perspective of how do you differentiate yourself? What's your
Mm,
stickiness? What's your moat? It really comes down to the experience that you're giving to your customers. And
mm,
so, flip side, when you're evaluating what vendors you should be working with, sure, buying software is really important. And
mm,
it's something that is a recurring fee that you'll be paying. And it will keep kind of the process going
mm,
of some of the trainings that you may be getting
mm,
as professional services. So
mm.
when I talk to CROs and they're asking me, should I buy your software? Should I buy your services? Typically, my answer is both. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's let's actually start with the services to make sure that
Mm,
we can get you ready for implementing software that you can actually use. So
mm.
I don't think it's either or. I think it's and.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when we take a step back and you really think about it, the business the prospects you're working with, they don't specialize in what you sell, right? So like, yeah, you take on the service, but you don't want to be like that dead weight of software you're paying, right? The software bloat. But that professional service piece can really help with actual true adoption, but also fully maximizing it, right? I think about, back when you're working like at Salesforce, right? It's like it wasn't just you just sold the software. There was the back end agencies and implementation to ensure they could fully leverage and utilize the full capacity. Because as you and I both know, most of the time, no one no one fully maximizes the software. Same here. It's the same. Like I have some amazing software. I mean, most of them I probably don't get the full max
Yeah.
capacity. And I think I'm like, if they had a professional service component of some of these softwares, I probably would, number one, do even more with them, right? As a result, pay them more. But I see even greater value. It makes it far harder to leave,
Yeah.
you know? So sometimes I think when people look at like peer scalability, like more software, that's the way to go. But like, yeah, that can help to a certain extent. But how can you really maximize the overall account and drive the customer experience, which has all these other intangible benefits, like, referrals, testimonials, and all these other things.
Mhm.
I love that.
Especially with something like a CRM, right? This is a CRM is what
100%.
almost every single sales org is using.
Yeah.
And they've already made the investment in it and they're paying
Hmm.
a heck of a lot of money for something like that. Or like
Oh, yeah.
LinkedIn Sales Navigator,
Yeah.
really, really powerful tools.
Oh,
They
yeah.
would actually get such a much higher ROI if they were to bring somebody in to actually teach them how to
Oh,
use it
yeah.
and,
100%.
use all the different elements of that. So I think there's a higher ROI from services in that perspective.
You're 100% right. And I think too, it's like, if you're like a really smart CRO and you see the potential in the tool, it's like, okay, even that org doesn't have that professional services. Hey, where can we go access it? Is it internally? Is it externally? But how can we fully maximize? And I think that sales now is a perfect example. You're already spending the money to get those licenses. It is such a wildly powerful tool, but most reps have no idea how to use it. Like it's the
Mhm.
most interesting thing. I'm like, if they were just trained for even an hour, like they're gonna know way more than the majority of reps. It's kind of wild thing. So
Yeah, most of our clients that are using something like that are using 10% of it. They're like, "Oh, I just get my leads there and then I go do my thing." It's like, you're spending so much money just to get a list of those things and not really utilizing it to full
oh yeah,
capacity.
it's like a basic search. I'm like, that's it. Like this is not a Boolean search. I mean, all right, well, that's fine. Okay, kind of burning cash is what you're doing, right? So,
Mhm,
um, when I think about you know deploying new solutions,
mhm.
developing teams, and change management, a lot of it has to do with how good the frontline sales leader is and helping deploy it. So, in your opinion, what's the biggest blind spots CROs have when it comes to frontline sales leaders?
Mm. I think that a lot of CROs forget after they came up through the ranks that
Uh,
first line sales managers are not mini CROs.
yeah.
They're not thinking the same way, they're not thinking strategically. They have
Mm,
their eyes narrowed in on their team
yes.
and their
Yeah.
direct manager. And
Hmm.
it's not what are we looking at holistically? And also that comes back to the comp plans. And a lot of first line managers are not compensated
Hmm.
focusing on the overall North Star of the company. They're
Hmm.
focused on or compensated on what they're focused on. And that's why
Hmm.
they're focused there. I think that's the biggest blind spot is they're like, why aren't they thinking this way? It's like that's not how you're paying them to think.
Oh, 100%. This is so true, right? It's I worked for a Fortune 500 company for years, and what was interesting was even as a frontline sales manager, only 60% of my number was dependent on how my team performed, which was key. The other 40% was how profitable we were. So the pure profit. So like, and they had changed over the years, and it used to be purely just off of like just sales. It was like, hey, whatever like the reps they did, you made money off that. And then that was great, but they saw profitability shrink. So how they change it? They add a pretty heavy 40% significant like kicker into how how profitable your overall org was in that area that you were at, and it would change my behaviors. Right, it actually forced me to understand the operational part of the business way more, to get to deeper weeds and like work with other departments. It actually made me a better like leader overall. And once I got to a larger role where I had like 85 reps, multiple layers of leadership and all that stuff. Half my comp now was on profit and earnings per share. So now it's like completely shifted my focus and my energy and how I drove teams, but it applied to everything. How did I hire? How did I train? How did I onboard? Right? It's like show me the incentive plan and I'll show you the results. That's kind of what it breaks down to, right?
Oh my gosh. I tell part of our platform is analyzing a 10K or an annual report.
Mm.
so that
Awesome.
when you go into procurement or you're going to
Okay,
negotiation, you
awesome.
know what's important to people. And this comes back
Yes.
to exactly that. If
Mm,
I'm selling to a CFO and she gets her annual bonus if the company increases their margin by 10%, I can
mm,
find that in the 10K. And then even if that's just like a minor subset of the product or service I'm selling, I'm going to show her how it can put money into her own
mm,
pocket. But it's the same thing conversely, right? As you're setting those parameters,
mhm.
if you're compensating your leaders on a certain thing, they will make buying decisions, they will make hiring decisions
Oh,
based
yeah.
on how it affects their own bottom line. So I'm very passionate about this subject.
Well, I mean, Lauren, you nailed it, right? And I think a lot of times, a lot of sellers, and a lot of execs, they get so focused on like, hey, here's our product. It solves a specific problem, right? Like, and yeah, that might be good enough to a certain extent. But a lot of times, if you need executive alignment, we need to understand what's the actual win for them in the overall org, but also personally.
Yes.
If we could show personally how they're going to bonus more, that's going to be pretty big. If we're going to show personally how it's going to help them, get promoted because they're making the right decisions to the next level of leadership or get on the board, that's really, really powerful. And I think we forget that human element a lot of times because we're trying to pull out like ROI calculators and like, let me show you ROI, which is good for a logical sale.
Mhm.
But what about the emotional sale when they have a lot of worry about a riskiness of a deal and trying to get over the line and putting their name on it?
Yep.
How can we get them bought in? You know, that's powerful.
1000%.
Is there, as we talk, think through the kind of 10K piece, is there any specific example, maybe a situation you've like ran into or you used it, or maybe one of your clients used it to help them with a deal?
Oh, all the time. All the time. I think the 10K is a gold mine that people don't really dig into. I mean, it's 180 pages of super
Yeah,
fun, dry content,
so fun.
which is
Good
why
Saturday night, scroll through reading it. Yeah.
exactly, which is why we put it in the analysis, right? Is I don't want somebody to have to read 180 pages. I want to have it served up to me to
Mm,
say, I know what you're serving, I know what you're selling, right? I know what the products or services are and what the typical benefits are.
mm,
How does this actually align to what the company is reporting to their investors and their
mhm,
stakeholders?
uh-huh,
And how are the people involved in the deal, your champions or blockers, how are they
mhm,
compensated and what's going to be important to them? But one thing that we also do is we pair in personality details. So I love what you're saying
mm,
is about this is a logical sale.
yeah.
Is one of my investors, Zinnia, gives you the personality details. So
Mm,
his is serious, stoic, and data driven. So if
mm,
I came in and try to give an emotional sale with him, he'd be like,
yeah.
I don't want to hear this. But I do know how he's compensated. And I know that giving him a direct number ROI will be
Mm,
important versus someone like me who's very relational. If you try to just shove numbers in my face, I'm going to be like, but do you even care about who I am? Right. And so it's important to cater it not only to like compensation, but like also how does somebody relate as a
mm,
human? It all comes back down to human.
mm. I love that. And if you're able to explain, like, how does your tech help identify? 'Cause I think it's so critical, right? To walk in and kind of understand the personality style. How does your tool get that information to help sellers?
Besides having a private investigator on every single person,
Great idea.
that we don't do any stalking, but we will analyze your entire online persona. So
Yeah.
obviously, somebody like you who is very public and has podcasts and news articles and your own LinkedIn posts and anything like that. Then we also analyze the persona. So what
Mm,
is your personality on a call? Are you
yeah.
really bubbly and funny and
Mm,
sarcastic? Or are you very serious and quiet? And then even down to, are you using exclamation points in emails? Or
mm,
are you giving me bullet points? Are you ending with no punctuation? All of those things kind of we distill down to say, this is who we expect this person to be. And if
mm,
we don't have a lot of that data, we
mm,
can also, we'll pull out insights and say, we don't have a lot of data on this person. Maybe they have no online presence. You've never interacted with them before. But given that they've been in their role for 25 years and they are an accountant, we expect their personality
mhm.
or they may cater towards these type of desires in these conversations.
Well, the cool part is you're walking with a hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
And we mentioned the critical thinking skills piece, where it's like you have a hypothesis, you walk into that conversation, it's like, cool, I need to approach it a certain way. And if you realize the opposite, completely cool, because you really can adapt and adjust now based off this. And I think this is something that not many people talk enough about because they think sales is a very logical step by step, but that's just not how it is. It's like it's actually quite emotional, even in B2B, for all the stakeholders. So I think if we can understand all the stakeholders at different levels, what their personality types are like, we have the hypothesis, then we validate the hypothesis, then we adjust accordingly. That gives you such an edge up over the competition, because now you can adjust your selling style to kind of fit them, right? I was just talking to a client yesterday. We're looking at one of our team's calls, and it was actually really interesting because we get in the weeds and kind of find out there's multiple presidents of the company. For one division, they're very much a marketing background, right? So that they have a marketing way of thinking, right? Very sales focused, which is great. Then we have one of the finance background, and like they're the ROI business case justification,
Yeah.
And so now we're walking through a strategy. How do we approach each one differently? Because we can't just, maybe he can show a fancy deck to the marketing person. They're going to love it. But we send it to the finance person. They're going to be like, just give me that one pager. Like, what's the bottom line, right? I think it's really, really powerful. Now, when we look at the teams, a lot of times you've seen teams ask for probably more training. Hey, we need more help on discovery. How do I start a call, or multi-threading? But the real issue is probably like manager reinforcement, right? Or something like that. How should CROs diagnose like the root problem versus let me just buy software, let me just buy sales training?
Oh, okay. So this is kind of maybe a taboo example, but I think about like church summer camps, right?
Mm.
Kids will go to church. I went and I would come home and I'd be like, oh my gosh, yes, like I'm gonna be the best kid ever. And like I'm gonna put all these practices into place after I spent a week there. And like, look, I love all these worship songs. And a week later, I'd be like playing tag and have forgotten about everything, you know? And I'm not comparing salespeople to kids, but in a way we all are. But
I
I
became a complete delinquent after a week.
But, it's like, this is great. It's awesome to have rah, everyone come together, sales kickoff, drink the Kool-Aid, get really excited. But if there's no reinforcement, you're going to forget about it and playing tag on the playground with your friends soon.
Oh yeah.
And so whether it's, rolling out and doing a big launch with software or doing a sales kickoff and bringing in a trainer, I really like to instill micro trainings or touch
100%.
points, whether that's customer success with software, whether that's micro trainings with somebody like Bentley, being able to say, okay, here's what we taught you. Here's how we're going to keep implementing it over time and even making it stronger and adding little micro trainings along the way.
I think you nailed it, right? I think it's also when you diagnose it and you realize, cool, we can't just band-aid the solution. We need to take a step back. We need to be like a doctor. We diagnose a core root issue, okay? And then we build in a system for like a reinforcement. I think about, when I think about even training or developing of a team, it's like sports. It's not like they just train the preseason. It's like, hey, good luck. Like they train nonstop all through. In fact, 99% of the time is spent in training, and only 1% is actually on the field. I know a lot of CROs who are listening to this and sales EPs. They're worried about the future and they want to stay really competitive ahead of the market. If you could bestow upon your wisdom and drop one piece of advice, what's one behavior that they should hardwire into their org to stay competitive the next 12, 24 months?
People buy from people. And I know that's redundant and everyone said it. I didn't come up with a quote. It's not groundbreaking. But we have so many of our customers that have come to us and said, we bought the AI BDR, we bought the mass automation tools, who are sending thousands of emails. We paid for the offshore BDR services that said that they could book us X amount of meetings. And they're filling their funnel with fluff, or they're not getting any responses. And it's because we have, what people are calling the great ignore. People are getting, mass automation means, mass annoyance. And so nobody wants to respond. And the times where I get an email when I know it was sent from a human, or an outreach of somebody sending me a video or a voice note or, a silly card, those are the people that I respond to. And it's because they actually took the time to care. And so few orgs are doing that. And so I think while everyone is leaning into mass automation, the companies that focus on the human element are the ones that are going to win.
I think you 100% nailed it, right? It's and I always found the best advice, and you're like, oh, I didn't come up with this. The best advice I found is true, not new.
Yes.
And we often need to be reminded versus told what to do. And this is where in a world where everyone's trying to run towards scalability and they're trying to go like mass everything, it becomes obviously a very, very busy world, right? And a lot of extra noise. But if you could slow down and say, hey, where are the gaps that kind of stand out? These are the gaps. These are the things that stand out. When everyone's trying to go left, you go right. Amazing interview. People want to find out more about you, Lauren and Zinnia. Where can they find you, get a hold of you?
Yes. So getzinnia.com is our website. And if you'd like to connect with me, find me at Lauren Goodell on LinkedIn.
Cool. That's a wrap on this episode of the Revenue Vault. Now, if you got value, here's your next step. Go to vendlingconsulting.com/teams to get a free performance scan of your sales org. We'll show exactly where deals are stalled and how to actually fix it. And if this episode gave you even one insight worth sharing, send it to a sales leader you respect. I'm Marcus Shan. Thanks for being in the room.